Welcome back to another episode of Guitar Talk with Todd. Here's the audio edition of a portion of my interview with the great Rickey Medlocke from Lynyrd Skynyrd and Blackfoot. These are some highlights from the audio that was used for the print and online interview that was published in the Buddy Guys Blues magazine, and many of you have asked about hearing this. If I get a lot of new subscribers, I'll know y'all love this one, and I'll release more of this interview, so please subscribe, guys. Thanks, and enjoy my interview with Rickey Medlocke. I'd like to start out asking what your very first memories of music were. I know you were raised by your grandfather, Shorty Medlocke, and he was a Delta blues player. Am I correct about that?
That's true. Yeah, well, my grandparents raised me, and, my grandfather, Shorty, played with a lot of different people, road guys, and he was a road guy, played with quite a few of the old country players in and out of Nashville, and had his own bands and played all around the Southeast, of course, and just had a pretty good career. And so I grew up around all this Delta blues, bluegrass, countryish kind of stuff. And that's where I got my learning, and from the blues section of it. He was really big into things like Mississippi John Hurt, and Robert Johnson and Huddy Ledbetter, just a lot of the Delta blues guys. And I grew up listening to a lot of that stuff. I mean, I cut my teeth, listening to all of it, and I still do. I mean, I love going back and listening and selecting different old blues artists and stuff and listening to it. So when I got up, in my teenage years, I was into playing, of course, the rock. And when Hendrix came around, I just flipped. And it was interesting because my grandfather, one day I was sitting in my bedroom, and I had my guitar turned up, and I was learning licks and, just different things like that. And I remember my old man came in, and I had on Hendrix, I had on one of his ballads,
Okay.
It was Wind Cries Mary.
Oh, yeah.
And my old man, he stepped in. I mean, he poked his head in the door, and he says, "What's that you're listening to, boy?" And I said, "It's a new artist, Jimi Hendrix." And, he just listened to what was going on in the music. He said, "Yeah, there's the blues right there for you," So he recognized those things right away. You know what I mean?
That's interesting. I was going to ask you what his take on Jimmy and those newer players at that time was. I mean, was he cool with that stuff?
He was always cool with, he could, if he felt it and he knew it was the real deal and it had the real deal inside of it. He was very, very open and very cool with all that stuff. One of the big things that that he really took a shine to, of course, when I first played with Skynyrd and I was in the band, they would come over to the house and be on the front porch with my old man, and he would play dobro, and he would play it on his lap and all that stuff like that, and he played these old blues tunes and stuff. And Ronnie really took a shine to my old man because of the blues influence,
right,
and of the Delta stuff. And Gary and Alan, right there with us. And thus, later on, was the inspiration for Curtis Loew.
Yeah, I've heard that before. That's amazing.
Yeah, and as a matter of fact, Ronnie even dedicated the Nothing Fancy record to my old man and wrote a song for him called Made in the Shade. Because my old man used to tell us all the time, you boys keep doing what you're doing. One of these days you'll have it made in the shade. And so, I mean, the one thing that I can say about my old man was he not only played every instrument that you could, I mean, as far as like older stringed instruments, you know, as far as like a guitar and banjo, and especially banjo, but especially guitar. But I mean, all the instruments that he would pick up, and I guess back in the day, you know, that's the way they had to be, because I think you had to be a very well-rounded musician,
right,
to get certain gigs.
Wow, so he sounds like he was a real natural. He also sounds like he was very open to all things music too.
He, to me, and I've said this often, was way more talented than I ever would be. I mean, he would pick up like a fiddle, and he would play that thing unbelievable. And he had this, even playing fiddle, man, he had this like Cajun bluesiness about him when he played. And it was so cool. But then all of a sudden, you know, he'd pick up the banjo and just kill it, or the guitar, or the dobro, or harmonica, or whatever. And
Wow.
I just used to be so thrilled about all that. And I guess, for the most part of it, I guess a little bit of it rubbed off on me.
So, Ricky, how old were you when you started playing guitar?
I was like 5 years old, man, and I started playing on his old, he had an old Series J-45.
Oh, wow.
And we still got it in our family.
Wow.
And it's still playable. My wife, she plays it all the time. And she claims that the mojo on that thing, every time she picks it up, she writes a song.
Wow, I can believe it.
So I started playing on that guitar. That's what I first learned on. And he showed me G, C, and D. And I'll never forget, once I got those down, he said, okay, he goes, there you go. Now the rest is up to you. You learn the rest of it on your own. And I would watch guitar players that was in his band. See, there was bands always coming to our house rehearsing.
Okay.
And, I mean, killer bands. I mean, these guys would start, and it was like nothing to them. That's what is amazing to me. How players back then, they played so well that they could just get together, and they knew all these songs. Somebody would call out one. Like my old man would call out a song, and they would play it. And maybe they wanted to change the arrangement to it. You know what I mean?
Right.
So they would change the arrangement to it, and boom, the song was done. And that used to just, I was horrified over that. I was just really like amazed over that thing. When I got to be a teenager watching them, I'm like, wow, how in the hell are they doing this?
Yeah.
You know? But they were older enough guys and old school enough to where they'd been around all these songs and music and stuff like that, that they knew the songs completely. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I love that stuff. I mean, I even think about it nowadays. I think about my old man and them playing, and it's amazing to me. I'm glad I lived. I'm glad I was raised by him and my ma. You know, because they allowed me the opportunity to express, you know, myself as far as music.
Right.
They pretty well knew that's what all I was going to do in my life.
Yeah.
And, you know, and they let me express that, and here we are today, you know.
I know you got to see Elvis perform as a kid. That had to have been incredible. Can you talk about that and other musical moments as a kid that had a huge impact on you and set you on the path of doing what you're doing today?
Well, you got to realize when you're 6, almost 7 years old, and your dad's in music, your grandfather. I call him my dad because they adopted me.
Right.
But when when your dad's in music, and he plays with all these guys that know people, and those people know people, and the whole bit. And I mean, I don't know if you know the story behind it all, but how he got the tickets was just amazing. And I was already at that young age already had a transistor radio, listening to the local radio station that was playing rock and roll all over the place.
Yeah.
And Elvis was the big thing, and I was just bananas over that. So, what happened was we went to the Florida Theater on his second night and got in to see it. And I was sitting center, probably, I think we were about maybe 5, 6, 7 rows back. And there was the King when the King was really the King.
Oh yeah.
And it was just like freaking amazing. And I remember on the way home, I'm standing in between my parents in the front seat of the car. And I remember my dad looking at me going, "So what'd you think about that, son?" I said, "That's what I want to do. I want to do that." So.
And you did.
Yeah, fast forward. I mean, understand living in Jacksonville, what the trip about Jacksonville is that you've got 2 of the major highways that ran through Jacksonville, which is Interstate 95 and Interstate 10. So you had bands coming down to Florida, going to Miami, or going to, Orlando, or going to Tampa, or whatever. And there was a promoter in Jacksonville named Sidney Drashnan, and he owned Jet Set Enterprises. And he would bring every band known to man in the 60s and into the 70s to Jacksonville.
Wow.
So for all of us guys that grew up in Jacksonville, I mean, we saw everybody.
Wow, yeah.
I mean, we saw like the radio station that was called the Big 8, WAPE. And I mean, I got to see Hendrix with the Monkees, the very last show.
Oh, wow.
That he basically did with them. I got to see, I got to see Zeppelin in Jacksonville. I got to see Deep Purple. I got to see all these great bands from the British and from over in England and so forth, and all the American bands. There wasn't hardly any band that all of us guys, musicians in Jacksonville, such as myself and Ronnie, Gary, Alan, Jack, and Greg, and all of us, very few that we didn't get to see.
So did you get to see the Beatles?
It's interesting because in 1964, I'm 14 years old, and we have a major hurricane in 64 called Hurricane Dora. And it was so weird, man, because at that time, and you can look on the Beatles documentary that was last out 8 days a week, that last documentary they did on them.
Okay.
But if you look on there, they talk about the civil rights unrest, that was in Alabama, that was going on at the time in Mississippi. And the Beatles thought in their mind, they were in Miami, and they thought in their mind, well, that must be happening in Jacksonville because it's the South. Well, they weren't even they were going to cancel Jacksonville at the Gator Bowl. And then we had a major hurricane hit Jacksonville, upper category 4. It just basically destroyed the town. And they were going to cancel. Well, the way the story goes is that the mayor of Jacksonville got to them and asked them, please don't do this. This will devastate the city. They've been counting on you guys to come, and we're already gone through enough, and we don't have this civil unrest here that you keep reading about or seeing.
Right.
And so they agreed to come, and let me tell you, in September of '64, I'm at the Gator Bowl watching the freaking Beatles.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Wow, that's crazy. So what a great area down there in Florida. I mean, it sounds like you were right in the heart of everything, and you got to see everyone and anyone pretty much.
You know, things like that, growing up, all those kind of things were so heavy to me and made such huge impressions and impact on my life.
Yeah.
And the thing for us guys was, and all of us guys in the bands back then, we never really thought about I guess you could say we never really thought about, quote unquote, being rock stars.
Right.
What we wanted to do, we thought about we wanted to play music for a living, write songs, and if people really liked them, you know, get them out there somehow and let people enjoy them, and if they loved them, you know, let us know, and
right,
you know, the whole bit.
Yeah.
Little did we know, as a garage band, I mean, little did we know that what was going to happen. And I still, when I think about it today, it just blows my mind. To think about, we were sitting in a little place called Hell House.
Oh, yeah.
And then all of a sudden, the band is huge. And then I think about what happened with me and Blackfoot. We're playing, we were oblivious to the fact that we just cut a record for Atlantic, and the freaking record is on the radio all over the country, and radio stations are playing it like crazy, and we didn't even know it.
Wow.
I mean, we were young, we didn't know, and the next thing I know, next thing I know, for a record that I cut with the guys in Skynyrd in Muscle Shoals called Lynyrd Skynyrd's First and Last.
Right.
The next thing I know, I've got a triple platinum record in my to my credit. Then, right after that, the Strikes record comes out, and I got a double platinum record to my credit.
That's amazing.
And I'm a young guy that never, you know, had more than probably, you know, $50 or whatever in his pocket. And I'm looking at it and I'm going, holy crap. I'm in bands that together sold 5 million records.
Yeah, that's wow.
And all of a sudden, right then, it all came home to me. It was weird. I still, like I said today, I look back on it. It's funny. I've got my wife calls it my wall of pride. You know, with all the gold and platinum awards in it, and then she looks at it, and you know, she will look at that and she goes, "Look at what you've done," you know.
Oh yeah.
And it blows my mind, brother.
Oh, I'm sure.
Really does. I mean, I was a little guy from skinny little Skinny little musician with a lot of hair that started out in Jacksonville, Florida, and and had no idea what was going to happen, and then boom,